Hi, Paul Gorney from Luxury Living in Chicago. I'm going to go over some of the craziest or most unique things about Chicago real estate. So subscribe below if you want to see a new video each week. And I am one of the most experienced top-selling agents for the last 30 years in Chicago. Represent a lot of our professional athletes, business leaders, and everything from first-time buyers up to those people, and just a trusted source for a long time. So one of the biggest things in Chicago, and I have a lot of friends, realtors across the country, and one of the most unique things about Chicago is that agents will show the properties that they're selling. So they will actually physically show up to the property, open the door, show you around, and this is not very common in a lot of other markets where they rely more heavily on lock boxes and alternative ways to get into the property. In other markets, they will rely on alternative ways to get into the property, lock boxes, etc. So when I've met people across the country, they're just like, they can't believe that people actually show up, show you the property, and you can't get an appointment unless other agents there. So in Chicago, it's a pretty crazy thing. You would think it's simple, right? But I can't tell you how many times you can't get into a property because the agent has something else going on, including working with buyers looking at properties. So it's kind of crazy because their client probably would love to know that they're not showing their property because they're out with a potential buyer looking at other properties besides theirs. So that's one of the craziest things in Chicago. It poses a lot of problems when people are looking for homes, and then when agents do show up, it's really kind of wild because they use it as a way many times to kind of bond with the potential buyer, and many times kind of, I don't know, it's on the edge of what's appropriate or ethical or good business, but they will kind of have agents grandstand, promote themselves, outright tell people to call them when they sell the property. It wastes a lot of time and really screws up your schedule, to be honest with you, and it's very distracting. I've had agents that are really pushy, demand that you look at one thing, you want to look at another. It's kind of a Chicago thing, to be honest with you. So most people prefer to just look at the property with their agent that's representing them, get questions answered, rather than being really quiet, not really being able to speak, you know, the way they want to, ask the questions they want to, because, you know, there's somebody kind of hovering over them at all times. Another thing people do is ask a lot of very kind of invasive personal questions, get into people's business. Some people do it more than others. I have to prep people, especially people that have privacy issues, and just let them know, hey, this particular person tends to pry a lot and is pretty aggressive. So anyways, it's a lot simpler when you can go on the property. It's like a breath of fresh air, and just look at it with your client and not really have a big issue with you know, getting into it, number one, and getting a proper schedule done, getting the properties you need to look at to make a decision, and then after that to actually have a showing that's quick, efficient, and not distracting by, you know, other people kind of getting in your business or kind of touting themselves or using it as a commercial or all these kind of crazy things. One story about looking at a house just recently, actually, probably took 20 minutes longer than it needed to, at least, because the agent kind of prides herself on dressing sloppy. It's kind of her thing. So she had a wrinkled t-shirt, pair of gym shorts, and told us, you know, kind of made fun of agents that dress properly or more business-like, and spent a lot of time telling us her views on this and kind of promoting herself, and asked me, you know, hey, what are you guys looking at after this? And given the nature of the client and the price range, I said, well, I don't really want to tell you everything we're looking at. I mean, there's really no reason for me to divulge, you know, that information. More or less is my stance, and she took that as an opportunity to just kind of go off on a little commercial about how she sells all the property in the neighborhood, and it was kind of laughable that we didn't want to share what we were looking at because, you know, everything goes through her, and it's kind of silly not to include her in. And, you know, once again, when you can look at the property and not have somebody there kind of at a certain point meddling in your business, it's a lot easier sometimes. So other agents across the country are always like, wow, that's crazy. Why would people try and show all their own properties? It's so time consuming, and many times in Chicago when they're there, they don't know the answers to basic questions many times. They say, well, I'll have to get back to you on that, or I'll make a phone call. And I don't know, it's pretty crazy, to be honest with you. 30 years of watching this go down, and I wonder who started this tradition. And a lot of other top agents in the country are just really surprised by it. Another very common thing is the prevalence of teams. So teams are basically like a small real estate brokerage, but they're kind of you know, stacked a bit underneath someone. And what that person does, that individual realtor, is they will put their number in the computer for all the people's sales on the team. So it's basically like an entire real estate brokerage, whether it be 5 people, 15, 20, 30, 50. And, you know, they kind of, in my opinion, you know, kind of looks exaggerated. You know, it's very confusing many times to the public. And, you know, they'll say, well, you know, I sold 200 homes last year. And when, you know, it was like 5, 10, 15, 20 people selling 200 homes, and they just ran through this person's number. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and it makes things kind of a little confusing, you know, comparing that to like an individual agent. So, you know, it's kind of a thing across the country, but in Chicago it's extremely prevalent that they have kind of deals with the agents that the agents don't get credit for their sales specifically that they work on. They just put them all under one person's number, and, you know, it becomes kind of an interesting, a little bit confusing thing sometimes. Another interesting thing about teams is they tend to pool the sales. So I've seen people where the main realtor that the sales are being pooled under take credit for all the sales, and then at the same time, team members that are actually doing the sales are claiming the same sales. So everybody's after the sales for the team to kind of promote themselves and kind of promote themselves an experienced realtor when, you know, there's one sale, and sometimes they try and make it go around 2, 3, 4 times, and it's really just one sale, but everyone wants to promote themselves with it. So it's kind of interesting, and you know, there's a big drop-off in team members sometimes, experience level. So the people coming to showings or handling parts of the transaction, it's a lot different than the main person in the transaction, and you kind of have to adjust and actually, you know, really be aware of this during the transaction so things go smoothly and don't get messed up. So just another thing to be aware of. Very big in Chicago over the last 10, 15 years has been all the rage. One of the greatest stories about not being able to get into a property that a client wanted to buy is, I always remember this, it's from about 25 years ago, is one agent told me she had scuba lessons. So couldn't show the property, had scuba lessons. I've gotten haircuts, I've gotten nails done, I've gotten, I'm the favorite, all-time tried and true favorite is I'm out with a buyer, meaning they're out with someone showing them property so they can't show you the property they're trying to sell. So anyways, it's a little crazy, and sometimes you kind of feel like they're doing you, they think they're doing you a favor by you know, getting into the property, because you're kind of like begging and pleading at some point, trying to get people in that are in town that are going to pull the trigger, make a decision, buy a house, buy a condo, whatever it is, and they won't let them in. So anyways, that's a little Chicago flavor, some secrets there in Chicago, that there's actually quite a few tricks and tips to work through those to get things done. I'm not sure if this is only happening in Chicago, probably happens elsewhere, but happening a lot in Chicago is people making videos just like I'm doing now and talking, and you know, a lot of people you know, try and come off like, you know, I guess big shots a little bit. I try not to act like a big shot. I'm a pretty experienced guy, trusted by many, but some people are going a little overboard, I think. So trying to, you know, act like they know about things that maybe they don't. One guy was making a video about an area and very much acting as an expert. And one point he made very strongly was there was a particular restaurant bar that was his favorite, and he always brings the kids there and the family there for a good beer and a bite to eat. And I knew right away that was crazy, because that restaurant had been closed for 5 years, and on top of it, the building the restaurant was in was knocked down and a new high-rise rental building was put up there. So I think that was trying a little bit too hard. So be careful who you're taking advice from. You may go hungry. The restaurant wasn't even there. So the other thing is, somebody just recently was doing a video on downtown high-rise condos, and they were calling them, they referred to them as skyscrapers, which right away told me that this person doesn't know much about Chicago high-rise condos, because number one, no one ever calls them skyscrapers. That sounds like something out of the 1950s, something like that. I don't know where skyscraper came from. I know it's a term from the past, but in the present day Chicago real estate market, no one, and I mean no one, uses the term skyscraper. You sound like you're not from the area or know nothing about the high-rise condos if you're referring to them as skyscrapers. So these are crazy to me, something most people probably wouldn't know about, but you know, sure signs of things going on. One of the wildest things in Chicago is the number of neighborhoods. There's, I guess, 77 different neighborhoods in Chicago, and then there's sub areas within those neighborhoods, and the boundaries of these neighborhoods vary depending on who you talk to, and it's pretty crazy sometimes. So people get confused, and actually a lot of these neighborhoods or sub neighborhoods are literally like half a mile long, or half a mile by half a mile, or a mile by half a mile. They're just small areas, but they have, you know, fairly distinct feels to them. Housing stock sometimes and values can vary, but many times the neighborhoods all blend into each other, and they're not really as big a deal as people make them out to be. It just depends. So you know, there's people that have clumped together quote unquote the downtown market of Chicago to include different neighborhoods in the area that are really not downtown Chicago at all. And I find it really confusing. Like, you're calling areas downtown Chicago. So turns out that, you know, they really don't go out very far in their coverage of the north side of Chicago. They were a little bit more born and raised on the south side of Chicago, which is a whole different world real estate wise. And so they have limited coverage, and they just clump it all together as downtown, when it's not really downtown. So I think that's crazy and confusing to people. And you know, be careful who you're taking advice from as far as neighborhoods go, and what areas what, and how it all works, because it can be a little misleading and confusing sometimes. Another interesting thing about Chicago compared to other states and areas is that buyers and sellers typically will go to the closings on a house. In Chicago, in Illinois, it's an attorney state, and a lot of other states like, I believe, California, Arizona, a lot of other states do not have attorneys working in the transactions. So in Chicago, you have an attorney on each side of the table. The buyers need to sign their loan documents unless it's a cash transaction. So people will actually show up to the title company and take care of all these things and have the attorney explain the paperwork to them. Many times in the past, sellers have gone to sign their documents, but with COVID and things being more easily digital now, they will pre-sign those documents a lot of times, and just the buyer will go to the closing with their attorney, the seller's attorney, and the closing rep, and take care of things. But that's definitely a difference. A lot of people coming from out of state don't understand how that all works, and it's a little bit different to physically show up to the closing and take care of documents. In Chicago and Illinois, it's extremely easy to become a realtor. I don't know, 4, 6, 8 weeks you could have a real estate license. So I jokingly say sometimes that everyone's a realtor at some point in their life, because everyone knows, it seems like 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 realtors. So, but when it gets down to it, to really be of value and a trusted source, people, there's a big difference in resources, ability to evaluate, negotiate, navigate, getting in houses when you can't, because the realtors sometimes are having scuba lessons. In addition to neighborhoods in Chicago, the lake is a big factor in real estate. So along the lakefront are some of the prime areas in Chicago and the northern suburbs. The thing you want to keep in mind in a hot market like it is now is when the market goes down, the properties on the western side of the city away from the lake, where the neighborhoods are pushing out and getting more valuable because of the hot market, those markets typically over the last 30 years get absolutely nailed when the market goes down. So they go down more than other areas typically, and some of the areas along the lake, tried and true, are some of the most stable areas. In internet bubble, the 08 crash, other cycles in the market, these areas are some of the most stable, and you really need to be careful. The type of property, sometimes new condo developments way west are attractive because they're more affordable, because you can't get further east towards the lake. So you got to be careful where you are in the market cycle, and just make sure that you're not caught in a game of musical chairs without a chair, because I've definitely seen that one happen in Chicago away from the lake. In Chicago, a lot of people work down in the Loop traditionally, which is the main business district. And I just had a client text me today, actually, and just say, what the heck's going on with all the home offices? Is it changing the market? Are people requiring, they were planning on doing some renovations, and they wanted to know if it's changing the market so much that you need 2 home offices in a house. Sometimes people do want 2 home offices now in Chicago, because the main business district in the Loop is not something people travel to as much, even though I think that's going to change to be the normal again, that most people will go down there, but there's probably going to be a percentage that don't. So I just had a client text me, ask me what the deal is. Like, is this a thing? Like, do you need 2 home offices now? They're planning a renovation. They wanted to know if they should incorporate one in, and I said, usually the second office, somebody gets the main one, and somebody else will kind of take the B one sometimes, just so it's there as an option. So they plan accordingly. But a lot of people are not going downtown Chicago, just like in most major cities, and people are looking for that second office sometimes. So definitely something to be aware of. One of the biggest things in Chicago is new construction. So new construction has skyrocketed, and it's actually kind of insane, and I don't know how much of it is can be kept up with. The property values have gone up 10, sometimes 20 or more percent in a matter of a year on new construction homes. So be aware of where they are, the specific kind of micro area, the builder, and Chicago, as other parts of the country, have really gone insane with that. The time of year is a huge factor in Chicago, very unique to Chicago, because A lot of people take their properties off the market in November, December, and then the market comes raging back at the beginning of the year, and things kind of sell artificially high. Basically between March and May, the biggest time of the year. Definitely starts building though in January, February. A lot of nuances to the market during those times, and really need to be aware of kind of the Chicago vibe, because things do get, camera going a little crazy there. Things definitely get crazy at the beginning of the year, and things are definitely quiet November, December. So you better be really up to speed in Chicago on how many places have been taken off the market, how many are coming on, what the supply level is going to be. The weather has a ton to do with it. So if you put on your boots and go to work, you may have fewer choices in November, December, but you get a much better deal. You also, before the market starts getting crazy, you know, you may be able to get in a little bit earlier. Like there's a few weeks, well, probably a couple weeks in February that are probably the best. And then there seems to be a lot of people coming on the market, March, especially April. So while there be a lot of competition, there are some points when there could be a lot of places coming on at one time, and if the buyers are not out in the market soon enough, could be a small window of opportunity we can sneak in. The Chicago market has lots of things you need to know. Text, call, email. If you have any questions about buying, selling in Chicago, anytime. I'm one of the most trusted sources here, and be happy to help anytime.